Big news today coming out of China as there was a bank run in northern Chinese banks, freezing over $6 billion of Chinese customer funds across 400,000 accounts. They were unable to withdraw their money as troubles loom regarding real estate giant Evergrande. Evergrande is in a $300 billion debt crisis, highly overleveraged, and now facing insolvency and possible liquidation of all of its assets. I'm going to cover how that's going to affect you today, as well as the crypto markets and a few other things, as well as what bank runs mean, how the banks work, and how you can protect yourself. So I'm your host for today, Megan Nilsson, aka Crypto Megan, and let's get right into it. All right, so jumping right into it, the Evergrande fiasco was in the news just about 2 years ago, and people were saying that they were going to default, and there was a lot of fear, FUD, uncertainty, and doubt in the market. And now here we are again. This is a pretty powerful image of a bunch of Chinese citizens knocking at the bank's door, trying to get their funds out. And the reason why I really wanted to make this particular video is because I want to bring it to your attention that this isn't only happening in China. A lot of you may have forgotten that this past March, actually in the US, we also had a bank run because banks started defaulting. Now, what is a bank run, you may ask? So banks are run on a system called fractional reserve banking, much like that of FTX, which is completely illegal for exchanges, but they were running like banks, and that caused the entire collapse. So fractional reserve banking is basically they're allowed to lend out X amount of money, a majority percentage of the money that is deposited, to help grow companies, to give loans for whatever reason. So they are highly leveraged. So they are required to keep a certain amount in their reserves at all time for withdrawals. But when a lot of people go at once because there's panic in the air, they oftentimes can't fulfill the necessity of those withdrawals, and funds are frozen. It's absolutely crazy. We saw it with Trudeau in Canada. When the truckers were protesting the COVID vaccines and they froze their accounts. I mean, it's censorship at its finest. And it just blows my mind when people ask me, why Bitcoin? There's so many reasons, but I even get people in my circle complaining about banks and how clunky and slow they are and that they have to deal with them. Bitcoin is the future, guys. Bitcoin is the future. And the more and more we see this, the more and more people are going to start opening up to the fact that maybe this isn't the only system in the world that can fulfill their needs. Maybe there's a better way, because they can keep a lot of control on you based on your banking needs. So yeah, this is something that happens. It's not really nice to know that if you need your money in a crunch and a lot of other people happen to need their money as well, it can cause a banking crisis. So that's what this episode is about. And the reason why Bitcoin can fix this is because nobody can freeze your money as long as you store your Bitcoin. Remember, not your keys, not your crypto. You can never have your wealth confiscated. You will always have control of your funds. Nobody can ban it. Your bank won't close. It can't default. Nobody has the power to stop Bitcoin. Actually, Michael Saylor just said that even if you took all of the miners in the world and try to slow down the network and eventually crash it, you might succeed in slowing it down, but it's unstoppable. The network is the strongest cyber network in the world. I mean, it blows my mind. So let's just get into some of the other stuff. And as I unveil the story, I hope that you guys understand more and more what's happening on a world scale. And we are going to end with where we left off yesterday with Bitcoin. Check out what the price is doing today and more. So here we have it. China real estate meltdown continues to deepen. Manufacturing is declining. Troubled horizons. First, Evergrande, which is the company up for default, then a possible $11 billion default for Country Garden on the cards. Who's next? We'll come back to the second part in a minute, but let's have a look at this article. Why should I care if China property giant collapses? Well, there are several reasons. So let's get into this because it's been circulating around in the news for a while. And actually, the founder of Evergrande was just detained and is now being monitored as they get ready for their trial, their liquidation hearing, or the possible liquidation. Let's move on. A crisis at the world's most indebted company has worsened after the chairman was placed under police surveillance. Follows earlier reports that the current and former executives at Chinese property giant Evergrande had also been detained. So the shares have been suspended for trading, and it marks another low for the firm, which was declared to be in default in 2021. So that's how long this has been going on. So triggering China's current real estate market crisis. What does Evergrande do? So it does more than just real estate. According to the website, Evergrande Real Estate currently owns more than 1,300 projects in more than 280 cities. The broader Evergrande group encompasses far more than just real estate. So it's also a wealth management company. It makes electric cars, food and drink manufacturing. So there's a lot that it does. And actually, he is one of Asia's richest people. The founder, Mr. Hui, the founder of Evergrande, and people were equating his demise or his possible, the demise of Evergrande to maybe a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk going bankrupt. Not good. So why is it in trouble? Evergrande expanded aggressively to become one of China's biggest companies by borrowing more than $300 billion. Leverage. Leverage has always been the reason and is the reason why things collapse. It always has been. It turns into Ponzi-nomics and the fractional reserves and the banks. It's all well and good if the company is producing money and the banks can get paid back. But when things go bad and they default on their debts, then the banks get in trouble. And this causes a liquidity crunch, meaning that the banks subsequently can't loan more money out to help grow new businesses. And it really affects the economy. So the new measures led Evergrande to offer its properties at major discounts to ensure money kept coming in. The Ponzi continues. Now it's struggling to meet the interest payments on its debts. This uncertainty has seen Evergrande's shares lose 99% of their value in the past 3 years. Wow. Why would it matter if Evergrande collapses? There are several reasons. Firstly, many people bought property from Evergrande even before building began. So Chinese citizens are trying to store their wealth somewhere where it can appreciate, at the very least, not depreciate. And this is what's happening. They're losing their money because they have paid for properties that haven't even been built yet. It's incredible that this was allowed to go on, but it has, and it's affected a lot of Chinese citizens. So a credit crunch would be very bad news for the world's second largest economy because companies that can't borrow find it difficult to grow, just what I was explaining. They may also unnerve foreign investors who could see China as a less attractive play. Is Evergrande too big to fail? Well, it's a serious question. And the truth is, Evergrande has already collapsed, adding that it is on the brink of forced liquidation. That is big. This could have a major effect on China's economy. Then as we go down, that could spiral, affecting other indebted companies. So this could just be like a butterfly effect. This could be like the first domino in the house of cards to fall. And then it says here, Mr. Roberts, who spent more than 2 decades in China as a journalist, said the old Evergrande no longer exists. And while the authorities may keep it afloat, it will be a radically diminished company. So meaning, even if it gets bailed out, it is not the same. It is dilution at best. And it is not good for the currency, for the people. It's a sticky situation. So, and then, China being as it is with the censorship and not allowing people to speak about these issues and not wanting to spread wide, not wanting to disseminate this panic across its, people, fears over Evergrande debt spurs run on China banks. So they found out that there was a debt-laden bank who had actually loaned a lot to this the Chinese Evergrande real estate development company. And the depositors lined up to withdraw their money from the bank in a northern province in China. So they found out that this particular bank had loaned a lot to this company that may be forced to liquidate its assets, and they got scared and tried to get their money, and they couldn't. Local police arrested many people suspected of spreading rumors that the bank was suffering a cash crunch. So imagine being in a country where just by telling your neighbor, hey, your bank might not be safe, you might want to go and check that out and withdraw some money, you could get arrested for that. I mean, we take our power for granted and our freedom for granted in Western worlds that aren't censored like China, that aren't under the communist regime. And it's scary. It's scary for the people there. So Evergrande, which defaulted on its debts, was one of the country's biggest private developers, now appears to be facing forced liquidation because its planned restructured debts of $329 billion has failed. And the founder has been detained amid suspicion of crimes. So, yeah, this is not a good situation. People protesting or getting in trouble left and right. And all of the accounts have been frozen that are linked to that bank. And meanwhile, the embattled developer, 300 million interest free. So meanwhile, the founding family of Country Garden recently loaned the embattled developer 300 million interest free. And the family was also trying to sell its private jet. So we've got another company that's in trouble here, Country Garden. It's not looking good. A hearing for Evergrande in a Hong Kong insolvency court later this month will lay bare the once unthinkable possibility of liquidating the property developer's assets. So I just want to bring this to your attention. The once unthinkable. It was once unthinkable that FTX could collapse. It was too big to fail. I've heard that so many times. I'm just going to put this on the record. I never worked with FTX. I never recommended it. And I didn't suspect that what was happening, but I think that companies that rise that quickly and are throwing that much cash around and doing that many extravagant things, it's never a good sign, especially if it's a new company. They run out of reserves, they run out of runway, and it doesn't end well. The one thing Binance has done well over the years, just as, unbiased bystander looking at Binance and having spoken to their founders and the vice presidents many times, is that they have cash reserves to withstand the bear market. And so far, they're still standing. So I think it's really important to kind of zoom out and not get caught up in the hype of things and just have a look at what's really going on and try to use your best judgment. I mean, a strategy of diversifying across exchanges, pulling your money off as soon as you trade or as soon as you make that purchase, putting it in cold storage or even in a hot storage, somewhere that's not dependent on the custody of the exchanges. Is the next Lehman Brothers moment, is this it? The next Lehman Brothers moment for Evergrande, the Evergrande debt crisis and regulatory precaution. So we have an article here saying, what are the international implications if this real estate mogul giant goes bankrupt and defaults? The short answer is it's hard to tell. Nobody really foresaw the implications of the fall of Lehman Brothers more than a decade ago. Not everyone thinks so. A possible Evergrande default could be a significant drag on the property sector, says Barclays analyst in a note, but we think it is far from being China's Lehman moment. Only time will tell. And again, there were $6 billion in funds across 400,000 customer accounts frozen. And just imagine you being one of those customers and possibly having your life savings tied in these banks, and you go to the bank to get your money out and you can't. It's a crazy feeling. I mean, I can't imagine what that would feel like. And for that reason, I'm all in on crypto. Diversification is great. What I do is I keep enough funds in the bank to pay the expenses for the next months to years. And, the rest is in Bitcoin or crypto. I think I'll go over that strategy in depth in another video. Michael Saylor also discusses it in my coming video. But yeah, we have to be conscious that these things can happen and they are happening around the world. Here's a note from Kathy Wood.
Last thing China wants to see is a big surge of inflation to encourage more protests. There have been protests already because consumers are not getting back funds that they had stored on wealth management platforms in the form of effectively money market funds. These companies went way, way over the limb in terms of property investment. So you have long duration investments, short duration liabilities, and they can't return the funds. And so the Chinese consumer has become quite dissatisfied. And the last thing the government needs is an inflation problem and another hit to consumer purchasing power.
The Chinese citizens have been told that they can trust these things and their money is safe here. And now there's starting to be a lot of unrest. And with the looming problem or threat of the massive inflation that could come with all of these bailouts and with printing more money, it's a really sticky situation over there. And now I want to play one more video clip of Kathy Wood from ARK Invest. I really, really like her ideas on the last bank run that happened in the US to get an idea of how this could affect the crypto market. So I already told you how it could affect you. If your money's in a bank and it's all tied up in a bank, you're subject to these kinds of controls. And eventually this could happen. It's a possibility. It's in the realm of possibilities. So diversification is never a bad thing. Now, Kathy Wood is going to describe what happened when those banks shut down and we had that bank run in the US this past March.
If you look at what happened during the regional bank crisis this year, we learned a very important lesson. We had regional banks stocks plummeting, some of them going bankrupt, and Bitcoin rose from 19,000 to 30,000. What did that tell us? It tells us that because of the decentralization and the transparency in the network, that counterparty risk is not an issue for Bitcoin. And so there was a flight to safety into Bitcoin. Think about that. As bank stocks were plummeting, that spoke very loudly to me.
So there you have it. A flight to safety. I mean, it seems to me far-fetched that at the point in the market cycle we are now and the point at adoption we're at and the understanding that Bitcoin is still far too misunderstood to be a real flight to safety, but perhaps it was a start. Possibly that was a start to institutions or even to retail investors waking up to the fact that your funds are not safe in banks and it's not completely guaranteed that you'll always be able to withdraw. So that's an interesting insight that Bitcoin went from 19,000 to 30,000 during that bank run. So you ask, what might happen if, this real estate massive giant in China defaults? What might happen to crypto? Well, long story short, in the short term, possibly we could have a crash or we could have a dip, but within the next 1 to 12 months, we could go on to see an actual rise in cryptocurrency, much like the one we saw this past March. Now, back to this first tweet. This guy says, then a possible, so he's talking about the real estate meltdown, right? Watch the hash rate for Chinese Bitcoin mining increase. So what he's saying is just what Cathie Wood spoke about. Watch when Chinese people start to turn to Bitcoin, the miners turn on their machines again and they start mining and they turn to Bitcoin as the answer because they have no other possibilities. And you might think, and you might be asking yourself, but didn't China ban mining? Isn't crypto illegal to buy there? Yes. It's very difficult to acquire, although you can buy it apparently through certain exchanges in China. And mining was banned. However, there are many underground mining rigs that are set up that the country is currently trying to shut down or look for, but they're out there, and that might be the only option for people who are as censored as in countries like China. So he's saying that the hash rate will go up once this happens. So that's it may or may not be, but I want to kind of like get you thinking about how this might evolve on a world scale to where Bitcoin actually becomes a necessity. People really start to wake up and understand why it's valuable and what it does. Cathie Wood spoke about counterparty risk. There is no counterparty risk to Bitcoin because it is decentralized. Nobody controls it. Nobody can shut it down. Nobody can change it. It's just is what it is by a mathematical formula with a hard cap at 21 million. There will never be more. It's a deflationary asset. It is very sound money. And then we go over here. This is what I told you guys earlier. If Elon Musk or Warren Buffett or Bill Gates goes bankrupt, that's the seismic of Evergrande. So he's saying that would be really massive if they're one of Asia's richest entrepreneurs goes bankrupt. Now, there's no way out of this that isn't bullish for Bitcoin. A hearing for Evergrande in a Hong Kong insolvency court later this month will lay bare the once unthinkable. So he's saying that this will be bullish for Bitcoin. Again, I think it'll be bullish over time, right away. People may be more spooked than not and maybe selling off as there's a liquidity crunch. But maybe, as was said over here, the miners start to turn back on and the hash rate goes up. Now, you might be asking, what correlation does the hash rate have with the price? This is just an article about China banning Bitcoin, but then it says here, China banned Bitcoin mining and became the world's number 2 Bitcoin miner. So it's just talking to the fact that there are actually still mining operations going on in China. So However, China's Bitcoin hash rate surged back to 30.47 exahashes per second in September, right after the ban, suggesting significant underground mining activity has formed in the country. So just what I was explaining before. So Bitcoin's hash rate, I want you guys to understand this concept too. Bitcoin's hash rate is hitting record highs, but does it even matter? This is an old article, but I just want you to understand what the correlation is of the hash rate and the price. So what happens if Bitcoin's hash rate increases? The hash rate rises as more machines are devoted by legitimate miners to finding the next block, signifying that the network's total computational power is high and it is difficult for malicious actors to interfere with the network. So as more miners get in the race to try to secure the network and mine new Bitcoin, then the hash rate goes up and it actually secures the network. And this usually has a positive correlation in price as investors are happy that the network is becoming more and more secure. There's more competition. And this typically has been leading to a rise in price. It says here too, Bitcoin hash rate has been in the news. So it's just explaining a little bit about this. Bitcoin mining in a nutshell. So I just want you guys to have a little bit of background on this. In order to understand the Bitcoin hash rate and its functions, you first need a basic understanding of mining. Bitcoin mining is a computerized process with three main functions: to issue new Bitcoin, to confirm transactions, and to ensure the Bitcoin network remains secure. So, where fiat currencies are issued by central banks, new Bitcoins are issued to miners via block rewards for solving a block. They do this by using special hardware to solve a complex computational problem, which produces a hash, a seemingly random 64-character output. So basically, it's an algorithm, mathematical formula that the miners are competing to solve to get those rewards in the form of Bitcoin. And as more and more miners flock to try to get these rewards, the hash rate goes up, the difficulty to mine the rewards goes up, and it's usually correlated to positive price action, which is what the tweet over here was saying. Watch hash rate for Chinese Bitcoin mining increase as the competition increases, as they flock to Bitcoin in a flight to safety, as Kathy Wood said. This is just more on the Bitcoin price correlation. As the hash rate increases, the security of the network improves, leading to increased investor confidence and high demand for Bitcoin. The increased demand in turn drives up the price. All right, so it's been a lot of information in this stream, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what's happening around the world and basically to explain why bank runs happen and how you can protect yourself. Diversify, okay? And I just want to remind you that this is episode number 4 in a series of 200 daily videos to keep you up to date on everything you need to know on the markets, everything you need to know to make changes, possibly in your portfolio based on news that comes out. And I'm going to keep it real with you guys every single day. So this is the Bitcoin halving progress bar. We are almost there. And rest assured, it is programmed into the mathematical computation that every time we have a halving, the Bitcoin rewards get cut in half and it becomes more and more scarce. And this also tends to have a positive effect on price. There are no guarantees, but I am more bullish on this space than ever, have more conviction than ever. And those of you who are tuning in now, you're going to win. So as a last note about the news, I love this tweet from Lark Davis. The news exists almost exclusively to misinform you and keep you in the dark. Turn it off, get rich, get out, and live free. That's it for today. I'm your host, Megan Nilsson, aka Crypto Megan. I'll see you tomorrow.